My name is Edward Tenthoff. I'm a managing director at Piper Jaffray. Piper Jaffray is a U.S. investment bank that is primarily focused on healthcare, and we're very honored to again support this incredible conference this year. I'd like to personally thank His Holiness Pope Francis, His Eminence Cardinal Ravasi, Monsignor Travni, and of course Robin for all of their support and hard work to make this incredible event a reality. And I'm personally always very moved and inspired to be here, and I always learn something from all of you, and I really think this is such a valuable collection of people and ideas, and it's just an amazing event to exchange different ideas and really advance towards a cure. Our panel is entitled Investing in Health, which frankly I think could actually be a subtitle for almost this entire meeting. One thing that for sure is that all of these brilliant ideas that we've been hearing about require capital to research, run clinical studies, gain approval, manufacture, and sell new products and therapies. Here joining me today are two industry veterans who have a tremendous amount of investment experience. First, it's my pleasure to introduce Richard Malloch. Richard is an executive vice president at Hearst Corporation, which is one of the largest private corporations, really truly one of the largest companies in the world. As you likely know, Hearst was founded by William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper mogul back in the 1880s. And today, Hearst is a global conglomerate, still with publishing and media interests, but is diversified largely as a result of Richard's efforts to financial IT, transportation and logistics, and healthcare. Richard left Wall Street when he was a banker at Morgan Stanley, so it's good for me to know that there is a career after Wall Street, so I'm really encouraged by that. So Richard, if you would, tell us a little bit about Hearst and where you guys are investing in health.
Thank you, Ed, and it's great to be with all of you this afternoon. We'll try to make this interesting. We know it's a hard bar to hit when you have had the Pope and you've also had lunch. So we'll try to keep this interesting. We're also told we shouldn't talk too much about money, but it's hard to frankly talk about investing and not talk about money. So to the extent I offend anyone when I talk about money, I'm doing it just to essentially make some credibility to what we're trying to do here.
So all the numbers you see on the slides actually are dollars, but they don't have any symbol, in case you're confused.
So as Ted said, you may know Hearst. Hearst is a large media company with holdings in newspapers, magazines, television, and cable programming. Our largest assets are with the Disney Corporation, ESPN, Arts and Entertainment, and the History Channel. I've been able, over the last roughly 10 years, to build a fifth leg of the Hearst Corporation, and it now represents about 40% of the profits of the corporation, all in information technology and software. And in that, one of the three sectors that we've chosen to invest in is healthcare. To date, we've focused mostly on the provider side and the payer side, and I'll give you some statistics of our footprint in the United States. We own 5 businesses in healthcare. In terms of our content, which is largely evidence-based and then real-world evidence, we're touching about 85% of patients discharged from hospital with some clinical guidance that we provide. We work with insurance companies largely around medical necessity and prior authorization, and we serve just over 200 million of the insured population, essentially about 75% of the privately insured individuals in the United States. We have a home health platform. We're really excited about that as a venue of care. We have a software system that's essentially an ERP, and we do 70 million home health visits over that network a year. About 500,000 patients wake up on our home health platform every day. And then we have a very significant position in drug information, drug clinical decision support. We fired just over 3 billion drug prescriptions last year. Our mission, as we see it, is to essentially guide the most important care moments. We believe very strongly that a patient is essentially on a journey through life, a healthcare journey. And there are moments in time during that journey where, in fact, the right information is as powerful as the right drug and as the right device. And so we've focused on that as our core purpose and mission. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So it makes sense that Hearst is leveraging its expertise and information data into health. And I think one of the efforts that you're doing is called M2Gen, which really sounds like a great opportunity to accumulate and use information in cancer care. So Richard, maybe you could walk us through a little bit more precisely how this works and how it can be used to improve cancer outcomes.
So yes, as I said, our primary investment thesis to date has been with clinicians and payers. Last year, we took our first step into biopharma. And this is a big data play and a big idea. We invested in it with the Moffitt Cancer Center and 17 other academic cancer centers in the United States. Moffitt has an approved protocol, which is called Total Cancer Care. It's an interesting protocol. When a patient is diagnosed with cancer, they are approached about participating in this total cancer care. If they consent, it's a lifetime consent. And the consent allows us to do three things. One, extract a biopsy of the tumor. Two, take blood and saliva. And three, take a clinical longitudinal view of that patient for the rest of their life. Right now, we have 500,000 patients that have consented to this protocol, which is extraordinary in terms of size of population to address cancer. We're in the process right now, we've identified 200,000 of those patients that are high targets for us to do this work. It's costing us about $3,000 a patient to be able to do that exome that we're doing, do that additional blood work and saliva work, and then also, and probably the nattiest problem, is doing that longitudinal care and extracting that in a relevant form into a data set. We're doing that right now with an anticipation of updating it quarterly, but conceptually in time, we'd like to do it in real time. So what are we doing with this database? We're building it into a large database, and we have right now 7 biopharma companies that are helping us by subscribing to it. Subscribing to it for a 3 to 5 year term, and according to what cancers they're looking to study, paying us anywhere between $8 and $15 million a year. We're also starting to work with some biotech companies that don't have that resource but want to do project work, specific work. So we're building this massive data set in a very careful way to be sure we have great sample, and secondly, some tools to allow people to do both drug discovery and then also clinical trial research.
Yes, that sounds like a great resource. Professor Sir Christopher Evans is one of the leading biotech entrepreneurs in Europe, having listed 20 companies on 6 global exchanges. His achievements are too numerous to list, but I'll highlight a couple of them here. So he created lung surfactant 30 years ago, which has saved the lives of over 1 million premature babies. He created cancer products that are used by hundreds of thousands of patients every year. Sir Christopher worked as a young research director back in the 1980s. I wish we had a picture of that, for the esteemed Henry Tamir when he was at Genzyme, when it was just a small company. And to his honor, the Queen made him the youngest scientist ever to receive the Order of British Empire, and also the youngest scientific knighthood. So really incredible achievements. And he's still going probably harder than ever before. So today he's primarily focused on cancer and has some very interesting charity ideas. So Sir Christopher, if you would tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Right, let's see what I got on my slide. I mean, thanks, Rich. Great. Unlike Rich, I'm the complete opposite to Rich. Brilliant guy in a huge corporation, and I'm entirely on my own. And I do everything on my own. I do everything from nothing and everything from scratch. And if it don't work, it's my fault. If it does work, it's me, right? So that's what I get up to. And if you look at this slide here very quickly, and it's just a quick flow diagram. On the left-hand side, ARIX. This is something I started about 20 months ago, about 24 months ago. But the moral of the whole slide is that by raising for the initial pot about 20 months ago, about $380 million of cash to invest, the whole purpose of this slide and the whole purpose of the box on the left, ARIX, is to invest in brand new breakthrough medical technologies across the world, in America, Japan, UK, and across Europe. And that's in all disease, all therapeutic areas. And what we did is took the 380 million, did a number of other things through these structures, which attracted another 100 million here, 200 million there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very money slide, this. But we created a number of companies, we backed a number of technologies, and if you look at the box on the end, we've now flowed about 2 billion cash through this system in the last 20 months into about 80 projects, and they're all world-class, world-leading, cutting-edge technologies. 52 of them are in clinical trials in phase 1 and phase 2 and in phase 3. So there will be readouts coming from the clinic later this year. I think we'll have 9 readouts later this year, and we'll have about another 15 next year. So there'll be some absolutely fabulous news, or not, depending on whether the Pope and God decide that this should happen. But if it all goes the right way, then there should be some amazing value and some amazing results for mankind coming out of this lot here. So I'm very excited about that. So the whole moral of the story is that even if you are on your own, if you sort of know what you're doing and you work 23 hours a day, I keep 1 hour for meditation, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet. But I got some great tips earlier today, and so I'm working on it. And things will just go up from there when I've worked that bit out. So very excited about that. But just give you a couple of examples very quickly, and then we do some questions or whatever. One of the dots on that first slide was about stem cells, and I use this one because I'm very passionate about it. And this is an example of creating a company, putting $100 million to work, and developing advanced stem cells. These are all allogeneic stem cells. We make billions of them in the laboratory, in glassware. They don't come from anywhere else. Those cells are then injected into people, so we've got 2 or 3 things running. The clinical trials, this is all FDA, MCA, EMEA approved INDs clinical trials, which I must say, I think Ed mentioned this, Ed Bozage, yesterday, and I'm hoping we're going to be working very closely with Ed and his BlackBerry Life Sciences team for maybe forever, actually, because we both intend to live forever. So we're gonna do that. On this sort of stuff, but I tell you, it's hard work to actually get these products, these innovative products, through clinical trials, even into clinical trials, to put them inside humans and inject them. So if you take the stroke one, this is for ischemic stroke damage, where you're actually injecting directly through the skull into the brain, onto the surface of the brain, on the periphery of the stroke. And we've had some amazing results. I won't go into them. I haven't got them up here. We're now doing retinal blindness. We're doing these in the US and in the UK with world-leading researchers and clinicians. We have some neurodegeneration coming through later in this year. Very exciting, and some great cancer stuff with exosomes, with mRNAs, as well as the whole cell therapies themselves. And I think we're probably one of the most advanced groups in the world, with our knowledge been going for about 15 years. But so that's one example. On all of this, we're going to move towards, as I say, Ed Bozage's efforts as well, and bring it all sort of together and do some great things. And I loved Joanna's presentation yesterday. She's here somewhere. I think some of that, because I built a stem cell bank years ago for about 50 million. I built a stem cell foundation, a charity, with 20 million. So we speculate money everywhere, putting it into early stage projects. And I love all that work. And I think there's some great clinical efforts going on there. And I hope we can do something there together as well, particularly if money's involved. My last thing is cancer, because for me, everyone, including me, has to focus in life at some stage or other. It's taken me 60 odd years to figure that one out. But and I want to focus on cancer for possibly the bulk of my time for the rest of my days as well. I won't bore you with all the numbers, But, lots of people think, some eminent people have stood up and said cancer will be cured in the next 7 to 10 years, and, there'll be hundreds of treatments, there'll be nothing to do, we'll all deprioritize cancer. You've got to be kidding. More people today getting cancer than ever before, more people died last year than ever before. 10, 15 years from now, I think more people will have died of cancer than ever in the history of the world, and more people will get it. And they'll be getting different cancers we never heard of, and different mutations we never thought of. And there's all raft of things going on until 1 in 2 people on Earth are impacted by cancer one way or another. So I think it's a massive issue for the next 20 years of my life to tackle. And one of the ways I want to tackle it is using this brand new model, the Ellipses model, and the 5 little prongs up there very quickly. Number 1, we don't want to do any research in cancer research. We don't want to invent yet another great, exciting cancer molecule that may go on eventually over a decade to do something good in cancer. And the reason for that, we've identified about 14,000 early cancer research projects and products already today. Over the next decade, another several thousand will pop up. So there are thousands and thousands of these things in existence. What they don't have is sufficient money to get through into the clinical trial, design the correct clinical trial. So for us, was to start screening all of these many thousands of projects with the world's key opinion leaders, with the world experts. We currently have about 80 employed in this organization. We hope to get up to 300. So if there's a world-class key opinion leader sitting in the audience who's dying to work for me, you just need to ask me later on, and we'd like to bring you in. These guys help us judge and decide what projects really, really could make it, because when we get to the clinic, we're going to design what we call killer clinical trials. Anything that's not going to work, we want to kill it quickly and get rid of it. Anything that looks like it's going to work, we want to design the ultimate trials. We don't care what it costs, and we want to run the phase 1 and the phase 2s and run them brilliantly. And as soon as the trial data comes out, and I've done this before in my career many times, then we want to take the whole package and we want to hand it over to one of the big pharma guys. We're not going to sit on it and daydream like other biotech companies and run around with share values and all the rest of it. We want to get it into big pharma to get it through phase 3 and out of the door, so eventually humans get this new cancer medicine. We intend to run hundreds of clinical trials all over the world from these thousands of projects, and we intend to get quite a few of them right, which will produce a whole matrix of new cancer medicines. And they'll combine with cancer immunotherapies, cell therapies, and all sorts of therapies. And then, maybe then, over the next 2 decades, we'll have a huge matrix of cancer treatments which allow most cancers to be treated chronically, maybe for life, without a lot of pain, without a lot of difficulty, if we can't cure them, instead of everybody dying from the thing in the first place. And that's the method. It's huge scale. The scale up of this thing is going to cost billions of dollars. So the initial is 300 mil, maybe another 300 mil. Sorry to use the dollar number, but this is big, big money. It has to come from people. It has to come from places. And that's what people like me do, is to bring it in into scientifically excellent projects. And that's really it. That's where I'm going to spend my time.
So, Sir Chris, let me pick up on that theme, because 2 key terms that always need to be considered when discussing investment are risk and return. So how do you assess risk, and how do you measure return in those examples that you've laid out?
Yeah, conscious of time, I mean, all my previous existence, we've used different types of methodologies for assessing risk and returns. But if you take the cancer one there as a classic example, no matter how good I think I am, and I've got a fantastic team as well, what we wanted to do to accelerate this program and decrease risk was to employ these 200-300 world experts through our new digital platform to review in detail and tell us what to do, not to do. And so we're double, triple, quadruple checking everything we do till we finally pick the winner. And that's a way of de-risking your process and prioritizing the projects and taking them through. And frankly, I would apply that to Alzheimer's, neuroscience, vascular dementia, or other people doing in other disease areas, this sort of model.
Rich, picking up on that theme at, again, a larger organization, how do you guys assess risk and measure return?
So I would say we assess risk essentially by creating an investment thesis. We build an argument, an analysis, and try to develop a specific need that we want to solve. We see a pain point in healthcare, And then what we spend most of our time doing is thinking about what's the execution risk and how can we span that risk. We look at it in terms of time to market. We look at it in terms of dollars to invest to get a minimal viable product to market. What we do also is we build an innovation concept around our company in 3 ways. One, the 5 businesses we operate, we ask each of the managements to produce 30% of their growth in revenue each year from products that didn't exist 5 years ago. We've achieved that across those 5 businesses. 2, we've spun up a venture fund, and we see probably somewhere close to 100 ventures a year. We probably make 2, 3 investments ourselves, but we see an incredible heat map from that. That's very informative. And then third, we have our own innovation lab, where we rapidly prototype concepts and bring them to market. So we manage risk in a number of ways, but quite frankly, risk is what we're paid for. We're comfortable dealing with risk. We thrive at risk. We don't back down from it. And then in terms of return, we're kind of an interesting family company. We don't buy to sell, we buy to hold. And so we actually have a very different model. Our approach to our business is how quickly can I grow them so that I'm actually in it at a comfortable level. Almost anything I buy, because there's so much capital in the market today, is more expensive than I'm comfortable with paying. And so the only way I can get comfortable is growing that business quickly to a multiple that I'm comfortable with. And then ultimately, I want to grow it so that it generates cash flow that I pay myself off. I own the business for nothing. And that's what we try to work towards as a concept. Really different than most other investors that are frankly in to an exit point. And so we actually have to have probably more durable thesis in terms of what we want to invest in, but we think it's worked for us well.
Rich, picking up on that, how important is partnership then in investing for you? And also with the unique position that you're in with so many different assets, so many different companies, how do you leverage that scale to grow?
Yeah, the partnerships are crucial. I mean, that last company, Ellipses, we've already got about 15 major partnerships across the world, in France, in Italy, in this country, in Germany, in Heidelberg, in the US, and the UK, in Japan. And we intend to have partnerships in almost every country in the world. Those partnerships bring us skills, they bring us assets, they bring us all sorts of new ideas and things into the pot. And some of them even bring investors with them for one reason or another. So they're crucial to have, and they're great pools. I mean, you know, for example, without naming too many of the partnerships, I mean, one of them has about 100,000 patients a year running through clinical trials, and they're running between 50 and 100 clinical trials, all in cancer, all oncology. And they've given us the first look to help them to pick these things and finance them and take them through our accelerated model, because the partner loves this accelerated model. And ultimately, those partnerships are going to bear huge fruit, probably within about 40 months.
That's interesting. And Rich, how about you guys at Hearst? How does partnership, and again, how does leveraging scale really help you achieve those growth goals?
So our approach to partnerships slightly different, and again, it's partly our culture. We want to be Switzerland. And as such, particularly in the information side we play in, we want to be in a position where we're not taking drug money for marketing. Because quite frankly, we're making clinical decisions about which drugs to recommend, and we don't want to see any kind of conflict of interest. We are making adjudication decisions and recommendations to payers, and so we want to stay clear of that market. Similarly, we don't want to be in a position where we're directing patients into, you know, specific venues of care or specific providers. So Our view is we can be an independent third party without financial conflict. It's interesting how many people respect that positioning that we've taken to and therefore want to work with us. Want to work with us, though, in an arm's length way, not to try to corrupt us or influence us, but to effectively either inform us or to allow us to help better inform them.
That's helpful. So we've heard a lot of this conference about patients and physicians, researchers, philanthropy, a little bit less about companies. And it's interesting to me, and I think it's sort of, we have the dual role of speaking about financing and also a little bit from the corporate perspective. So what do you guys see as the role of companies or profit-driven entities in advancing medicine and creating cures? And I'll let either of you go first, please.
Go, Rich.
Well, I think the obvious thing in healthcare right now is costs are at such a height and as a percentage of our GDP, unsustainable levels. So any development in healthcare, quite frankly, it's got to show a demonstrable return to justify any kind of expense. And quite frankly, to the extent we can actually drive down costs, one of the areas I mentioned we're very interested in is home health. We believe way more care can be delivered in the home over time. If you think about a hospital just 10 years ago, patients that were in the hospital 10 years ago are now treated in outpatient clinics at large percentages. Currently, patients that are hospitalized probably 10, 15 years ago were in an ICU. And so we see the movement to increasingly treating patients where they want to be, at home, in clinics. I spent time just this week with the leadership at CVS. They're going to commit 20% of their stores over the next 3 to 5 years to provide essentially health services that a family physician would have been providing. And their view is, we're going to be open between 8 and 8 at night. You can come in anytime, and you're going to be able to get roughly 90% of the services you would have gotten from a family practice physician in our store, which, by the way, in the US is almost on every other corner. So we see dramatic changes in terms of venue of care, and we also see really interesting things with censored data in terms of the treatment of care.
What do you want me to say, Ted?
I think you've said it with your slides and what you've accomplished, but anything in particular to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, mine's a completely different model. I mean, the emphasis is ultimately has got to be on profit, because if you're going to invest $1 billion, whoever, unless Ed Bozage wants to give me $1 billion tonight in the bar, which would be fantastic, for nothing, which he won't. They're going to want some money back, right? And they're going to want a return on it. So the model has been calculated. I've been doing this all my life. So where I have invested hundreds and hundreds of millions, I have been fortunate enough to get things through phase 2, which are very successful, then sell them on to the big pharma groups for $1 billion a time, and I've done that over and over again. Then that money goes back, and most of those investors give me it back. They recycle it. And particularly in the cancer model, that's really important, that you are, you're running a lot of clinical trials, you're saving a lot of patients, you're getting great clinical data. Everybody can see there's a great new cancer medicine coming, and another one, and you're trading them through for hundreds of millions or billions with good royalties. And all that money goes back to the investors who want to put it back in because they love what you do. And you've got to deliver. People like me have got to make things work, and you've got to deliver. You can't dream and just wander around the place. So I'm afraid the word profit is there all of the time. But I love philanthropic money as well because it's free.
Excellent. Well, with that, I want to thank both of my panelists for a great discussion and for all of their hard work and what they do. And thank you all for joining us.